can watch it, or if you want to go back. Now, we finished last session, just reminding you where we sort of finished off. We had a bit of a chat about this scenario, which was the unsealed road being sealed and the intersection formalized a bit, and the fact that that increased risk of that see-through effect and overshoot type crash, and it really, I suppose, just reinforcing that need for road safety audit, that independent set of eyes to check through this sort of thing and think about what could be done to lessen risk. Are we going to present any new risks? Are we getting the best outcomes we possibly can in a safety sense? And we've finished pretty much just going through those stages of road safety audit, the types of road safety audit: feasibility audit, preliminary design, detailed design audit. So those are all ones where you're going to get a design, a plan on paper, and you're going to look at the existing road environment, and you're going to look at the plan, and you're going to imagine how it's all going to be built in the future, and then how the road users are going to be interacting and using this, and what they might see, and what they might be, how they might fail in there, and what's going to happen. Construction site, that's the traffic management plans and traffic guidance schemes and those sorts of things. So again, you're probably looking at things on paper, but also out on the site and thinking holistically about risk there. Pre-opening audits, so just before the ribbon's cut, and immediate post-opening, and the existing roads thematic audits. And I did mention that though, this can be termed a lot of different things, so just be a little bit wary of that. Okay, so this session we're going to cover off two things. We're going to first of all go through the steps of a road safety audit, right? Now, the steps are the same steps in any one of these, right? So you still follow these 8 steps that I'm about to take you through. So it doesn't matter which one of those you're doing, you follow these 8 steps, right? And we're also going to have a chat about pedestrians, the first of our specific road users that we're going to delve into, but that'll be coming on a little bit later. So let's go. So the road safety audit is a fairly straightforward process. I said 8 steps back there. The new guide sort of splits a couple of them out, so it's sort of 10 steps, but 8 or 10. I'll take you through those. The audit takes time, adds value to a project, and it really has to be an integral part of the design process for our public infrastructure. Just a little continuing on our trivia into this one, maybe a little bit of a road safety aspect to it. Anybody see? Pop this into the chat if you see an issue with that sign, and I'm going to come back to that. We'll let people jot in their ideas, and the first one to identify it will get a prize. But I'm going to come back to it. So let's have a look through this process. Okay. First of all, we select the audit team. And then the background information is provided to that team. So I'm just taking something there. Now, I've made those red because that's really the client, or sometimes called the project sponsor's responsibility, right? They're choosing who's going to do this audit, and they're providing them then the background information. Then there's some sort of commencement meeting or interaction or discussion. Something happens then, and that's going to be the audit team and the and obviously the client as well. Assess the documents. So that's predominantly the audit team. I suppose clarification can be sought from the client there, and that can be really just checking Are they interpreting things right? What do you mean by this? What's plain? But you're sort of clarifying anything. Then you go through that conducting the audit. And this includes the site inspection. Then we write up the audit report. Issue that audit report back to the client. Some sort of completion meeting, or at least that exchange of the report and checking and clarifying anything. And then the client needs to sort of make responses to any recommendations or the findings. And that doesn't necessarily need to go back to the audit team. It's nice if it does, but it's really over to them for their records. And then we want to implement changes. Now, the key thing, implementing changes is such an important, obviously, step. If there's no intention to ever implement or change things, that there's no point going through the audit if things are identified. But we'll come back to that. So let's go through these sort of one at a time. And I am coming back to that roundabout question, so I haven't forgotten. Okay, so we're going to select an audit team. And what we're going to want is a person to lead this road safety audit. And under the 2022 Austroads guide, we're saying that team leader must be a senior road safety auditor. That's generally been the way forever, but it's sort of clarified there. And then you can have road safety auditors and others, be that observers, trainees, or the like. Now, in our final session, I'm going to talk you through, how you get onto these registers, how you get that accreditation, what the different requirements are and things like that for these different categories that I'm putting forward. For now, I'm just saying that this team needs to be selected and somebody needs to have a think about ensuring that we've got that good team. Technically, the client's responsible for appointing the team. In practice, it's usually sort of maybe a consultancy they go to, or they go to the one key auditor they know and expect them to form the team around them that they think is appropriate. Now, a few little tips from me on this. It's a team. It's an audit team, okay? And that's going to be more than one person. And we need to make sure everybody's independent and that a senior auditor is the team leader, that they've got that sort of qualification as a senior auditor. Now, ideally, we would have this broad mix of road safety experience, different sort of professions, different way of looking at things, different ages, different, or have empathy with different road users, males, females. Now, that's often very hard to sort of pull together this team, and sometimes you're a little more constricted. But here's an interesting audit team I pulled together at one point because there were three of us that were going to be on the team, and actually we're all about the same age. We're all male. We were all traffic engineers and road safety engineers within Victorian government for our first 15 years of our career. We kind of all see the road environment in a pretty similar way. So I asked Wendy to come along and be part of the audit team. And Wendy is a little bit older than us, female perspective, has a sort of very different take on the road environment. It's nice to sort of be challenged on things, or she just says how she sees things differently, and provides a lot of value. And she's not a technical road design person, engineer, or the like, but she certainly adds value from that wider perspective and the different perspective that we need to sort of think about. So if you can do that, it can be really valuable. And yeah, it makes a nice rounded team. So the background information is passed over, the designs and everything like that. And then commencement meeting. Now, I mentioned their commencement meeting. Sometimes it's a phone call if it's fairly sort of simple audit, and it's a client you've been working with or done audits for in the past, and they know the process and you know the process, and everybody's sort of in the mold. But there's certainly for big projects, there's often an actual sit-down commencement meeting, or these days on Zoom or Teams or the like. And you work through the design just so everybody's clear on what's happening. You sort of looking at the documents, assessing, and then you take all of that away and you get into your audit where you're really delving into the details of the designs, and you get out on site during the day and night. Now remember to count your Ollies, of course. And why do we do nighttime inspections? So we said the day and the night. Well, first of all, you need to get out there to the site. I mean, that I think will become clear to you over the session that we still, it's never as good from street view, near maps, photos and the like as it is when you're out on site, out there and you see it and you feel it. Now it'll be interesting. We've tried to go, into this next level where we're going to get you to sort of 360-degree view of the world and do a little mock sort of desktop-y exercise thing. And then for the final assignment, we're going to get you to go out on site. And I think you'll see the difference. So, even if this is kind of cool and fun and you do see some different things and hear stuff, it's not quite like being out on site. So the nighttime part of that is why out there at night? Well, you do see different things. And this one's a photo, just example of the retroreflectivity. So we see where North Croydon is there in the daytime. And then at nighttime, obviously we don't. So sign retroreflectivity is one thing to have a think about. Also, obviously lighting. Sometimes the land use changes at night. Maybe there's nightclubs or things and, different things emerge there, people running for taxis or going for the late night kebab or whatever it is. And, it can operate quite differently. So we want to see it in the daytime and the nighttime. Ideally, we would see it in all different weather conditions, when it's wet, it's dry, during summer, during winter. Practical realities are we can't be doing all of that, but daytime and nighttime is generally accepted. There's a little bit of easing of some of the feasibility nighttime inspections as part of the new Austroads guide, but generally nighttime is important. Now, I'll admit, I probably maybe one in 10 audits do I find something meaty at night that I wouldn't have been able to pick up during the day. Sometimes it's, lights come on and then it creates a bit of visual deceit or something like that. Often, maybe lights aren't working or these sort of things. But there's a lot of time you don't pick up a huge amount, but it's important that you still do it, because that one time you do pick up something will be really important. Okay, Catherine, I see a few, I see the chat lighting up. I haven't seen any of the questions, but I'll check in for questions and then we might go back to anybody who had an answer on this.
Yeah, sure. Just a question from the group. Do two people need to do the site inspection, or does one need to just review the findings?
Yeah, it's a good question. Good practice is two out on site and looking at it together. It's not directly specified that has to happen, but we do very much encourage that. Now, there's going to be a bit of judgment. Really, the client should be making the call on that, but there should be obviously judgment from the auditor. But if it's a very small job, it may be one person on site, maybe a new splitter island or something, one person on site and another reviewing it. But more often than not, we would expect the two auditors or three auditors to be out there together, discussing it, looking at it, pointing things out and the like. But as I say, there is provision in there for it to happen as a one-person inspection.
Yeah, great.
Also, I just flagged that you do need to consider your occupational health and safety. We deal in a very, we're out there on roadsides and in areas that are kind of dangerous sometimes. So that second person can also, just from an occupational health and safety perspective, be important as a spotter or the like.
Yeah, that's right. A few people just raised that as well, being an OSH requirement, and just, safety overall, and using common sense with, it's nice to have a buddy with you and watch out for you while you're doing site visits.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. And certainly you'll find a lot of scenarios also where you're going to have to get traffic management to do an audit. Like you cannot do it by just, turning up and parking the car and, freeway style examples. Some of them, maybe a drive through if it's the early design stage. But if you've got to get out there and, measure crossfall, barrier heights, check things like that, you definitely can't be doing that. Anyway, we'll put the occupational health and safety stuff aside at the moment. It is important. Interestingly, for your site visit you're going to do, that we're going to send you out to, we've very much put selected sites which are very low risk, very much you don't even need to go on the road, you can walk on footpaths and things like that. So hopefully that's all been sorted on that. Now, any other questions come in there, Catherine? Did anybody?
Yeah, there was just a question on TMA, which I wasn't sure what that meant. So I asked to clarify that. So shouldn't a TMA be organised during the audits? So for the group, it's a truck mounted attenuator.
Yeah. Well, it depends. You've got to do your risk assessment before your site visit. And certainly like a TMA, if you're doing a local road roundabout or something like that, we wouldn't be required. But certainly if you're out on as I was talking there, a freeway, highway or something, that's what you would certainly be expecting. Okay. Oh, I just was looking at the chat there, and one popped in from Matt. Good day, Matt. Is a site visit required for major step change in the network, i.e. Now when the environment will be completely changed? Okay, good question. So like big, multi-billion-dollar project, and taking out completely new sort of area. It is required. The site visit is still required. What you'll be focusing on though is your tie-in points, really your tie-in points, how things are connecting, sometimes your geometric alignment, and getting an idea of how it's going to sort of flow through like that. But yeah, it is required still. As I mentioned, the feasibility one, you may not need to do the nighttime inspection if that's determined as not required, but still, yeah, we do need that site inspection.
And just another one around organising RSA, accredited RSA to go out on site. How do we organise that? And is there a register? So
I'm not 100% sure I understand. How do we organise to go along on site audits with a team? Oh, okay. So, well, you're really going to get engaged by a client or join part of an audit team. But yeah, it's sort of up to you to do that organising. You can't sort of say, there is no register to say I'd like to be part of, or I want to do the next audit that comes up, or be part of the team. It's really about talking to people that need audits done, and getting part of that team. If you're in a state government or a local government, it can be very hard to get that experience. So what we do keep a little bit of a list of, this is internal, of people that are interested in getting on-ground experience auditing, sort of continuing their learning. And for the audits that we do commercially, we'll take people along to get that experience and keep sort of mentoring them along. Most people working in consultancies will have plenty of opportunity to be part of audit teams and the like. But if you're really struggling and you want to do more, get in contact with us and we can see what we can do there. Right, what do we see? Did anybody come up with something on this little sign, Catherine?
Yeah, there was a few. Looks like you can't turn left. Is the roundabout icon for anti-clockwise flow, i.e. left-hand drive. And then a bit of funny there about the spelling of one of the roads.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, prizes for the first person who said, the anti-clockwise bit, but also who said you can't turn left. And I think that's,
Yeah.
So I bring this up because it's a little bit of fun sort of traffic engineering trivia. I often ask, how many times have you driven past a roundabout sign in your life, and have you ever noticed that there's a gap? And have you ever thought about why there's a gap there? And really, the gap is always on that side, and it's to subtly remind road users that we drive clockwise around roundabouts. And so what is the risk of that in out there? You'd probably say pretty low. Okay, so they put out this one. People still know how to use a roundabout. They're very influenced by so many things. The signs, so you're not. You definitely pick it up in a road safety audit design and it get fixed, no worries. And the sign design, sign face design, things like that. Existing conditions, it'll probably be fixed as well because it's not right. But you sort of get to risk rating. But I suppose the question I've got is, and maybe pop this into the chat, in what environments might that risk elevate a little bit more, getting that right? A little bit. Not to say it goes to a extreme or intolerable or maybe high risks, but great. Okay. Coming in thick and fast there, near airports, tourist destinations. Exactly. Okay. So there's an example. First one you hit coming out of Hobart International Airport from the hire car place. And this is the one. So people are spot on there, Okay, you've got to think about the context we're in, because the risk is really very contextual, not just about the physical road environment and speed, but also who are the road users and the like. And so you can imagine, an American tourist has got to Hobart and they've got the hire car and they've come out, and this is potentially the first roundabout they've ever driven in their life, and they drive on the right-hand side of the road, and a little bit of elevated risk there, isn't there? And so you just need to reflect that sort of stuff into your audit. So prizes there for anybody you think should get prizes, Catherine. I'll let you work out that. So you write the audit report. Okay, there's a number of things that should be in a road safety audit report. I've listed them there, but what I'll show you is a typical table of contents, an exec summary, abbreviations, and then your lists of tables and figures. Some background into the audit process. Now, why do we put that there? Well, it's important for especially people receiving these reports who have never heard of road safety audit. Well, they don't know the first, like we're explaining the process to them and the team and how it was all done. The scope of the audit, overarching comments if you want, but then into the audit findings and some photos of your site visit. Now, what we've done is put a template road safety audit into your memory stick onto Moodle, and what we say is use that, rebrand it, put your own branding on it, do whatever you want. Use that as a bit of a template, so we're all getting a consistent report, and we know that report conforms with the 2022 Austroads guidance. So at least have a look at that. Feel free to, use all the words. We're not saying there's no copyright on it. It's yours to use. So after you've sort of written up that report, you issue it, you hand it over. A completion meeting may be held. It may just be a phone chat to get that. If you've got any questions, or it may be a more formalized meeting. The client then will write responses to each of the findings and recommendations. And I say recommendations, as I mentioned earlier, New South Wales doesn't do recommendations. at the moment, but the receiver of the audit report in New South Wales would be responding to those findings and coming up with what they want to do to address those risks. In our other jurisdictions, they'd be looking at the findings and saying, well, do we agree with that and the recommendations, and also saying, do we agree that that's the best way to address it, or can we do that? And that does not need to come back to the audit team. We love it as an audit team if it does, because we get to see what's going on, and we get to, out of our own interest, are they addressing these things? But that's not actually required. But then anything committed to by the audit, by the client, needs to be implemented if they've committed to it. Now, let me delve into this a little bit further. So it's handed over either, email or at the exit meeting. Sometimes, they'll ask you to do a presentation or something, which is all fine. File copies should be kept, and I stress that. Keep a file copy, because you never know down the track when somebody will be questioning you, or legal action may be pending, and so you want to make sure you've got the copy that you issued. The project manager is required to respond to in writing to all the recommendations of the audit report. So an audit report that has recommendations and no commentary from the project manager or the client as to what will or won't be done associated with that, that's a bit of a smoking gun there for the legal team, because audit team has suggested something, you've done nothing with it. So that responding is really vital, and it's got to be done, and it's got to be kept on file, at least within the road authority or the client. And it has to be a part of the process within the organisation. But if you are the project manager or the person receiving that report, a couple of things to remember. Well, it could become public, whatever you write in there. So just be aware of that. It's good practice to respond to the audit team. We like to see that. But this one down here, it's your project, and you are responsible for what will and will not happen. Okay, so it's not, the auditor has no legislative power to tell you have to do something, or you don't, have to do something. The auditor is just providing advice. It's an advice report to reduce risk on your project. So, you're not signing off as an auditor that it's accepted. You're just providing that advice, and it's over to them to make the end decisions. But if you receive an audit report and you disagree with one of the findings, which you are absolutely entitled to do, you really need to justify that within your response. Okay, it just putting in there just disagree, no action, again leaves you at risk of issues down the track. And again, it's probably more a legal thing, but it could be a road safety issue as well. But the way a prosecuting lawyer might go at that is to simply say, okay, so you said you disagree with the accredited road safety audit team who are experts in this. Why did you disagree? And why do you think but if you've justified it in a meaningful way, then that's a robust way to defend that. So I don't think we have a quiz there. We're going to have a quiz in our pedestrian one, I think, Catherine. But I will take any questions as I change over slides.
Yeah, just one from the group around when the client asks for RSA responses to be closed out by the auditor. It's my understanding that this isn't required. How do you respond when asked this question?
Sorry, it is not required. Is that what they're saying? Yeah, well, it isn't required.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a bit of lack of sort of understanding from the client's perspective. Sometimes I'll have that conversation with the clients and say, well, it's actually not our responsibility. And if you read section, whatever it is, 3 of our report, it says that clearly, that it's not for us to decide, whether you do or you don't. But what we sometimes do is add an extra sort of column there to make our comments around their commitments. We might say, we believe this reduces the risk to flow or something like that. So it's sort of additional added niceties out of that. You want to have that conversation with your client. It's extra work for you, but it can sometimes, make them very happy. And, we are adding some value from that perspective, I suppose.
Yeah.
Any other question? Good. That's a really good question.
Yeah. Would departures from standards be part of the reasons why issues are not addressed? Yeah,
it's often that an auditor will identify a safety issue that meets standards, and the response is that meets the standard. Now, I get particularly annoyed at that because that's not adding road safety value, not part of what we want to be seeing from the audit process. And so that's why you'll notice in a couple of the examples I use and in the audit reports, I will sometimes actually in my finding try to trump that by saying, we know that this meets the standard. However, we're still concerned by it. We believe further risk mitigation measures should be undertaken. So they kind of then have to start thinking about wider, what else can be done. So you can sort of alter that from the get-go. I hope that answers that question, but if it doesn't, please come back to me. Otherwise, I'm going to jump to the first of our specific road users. Oh, sorry, one thing I actually sort of missed saying there, and I think it's a really important thing for auditors to do, is write down the exact design number, the plan number, the date, the designer within the report. Now, if you use our template, you're fine, because we've got a table in there where you write exactly what it was. The reason for that is just, again, one from sort of past experience of having undertaken road safety audits, and then one in particular was a legal case, and I was part of the audit team, and we, down the track, and we got involved in this, and so I dug out my audit report and it referred to the specific plans, which I had copies of, and I was like, okay. And then it was a design stage audit, and then went out to the site and looked, and what they'd built was significantly different to what the design was that we audited, right? And so it then became quite an easy, process in the legal thing to say, well, yeah, sure. I mean, what was built was very different to what we looked at. Here's what we looked at, and it's clear in the audit report because that's the number, that's the plan, that's the version. There it is. That's what it was, and off you go. Because often, there's things that we built, and there's lots of variations down the line. They've changed this. During construction, they found some ancient artifact, and they've had to realign this or do something completely different. But they would, say, oh, well, we did a road safety audit, and yeah, so just try and cover yourself that way. Okay, so what we have to do in this course, and it sort of sits with the Austroad syllabus, is to touch on all the road users out there, just to switch a light on in your head to think about each of these road users as you're out there undertaking the audit. I'm going to start with pedestrians, but we'll cover cyclists, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles, cars we've sort of been covering as we go a little bit, and that sort of continues along through. But these are really just a few little things to turn some light bulbs on, thinking about the needs and the safety of these road users. So we're going to sort of start by identifying some requirements for pedestrians for safe travel, point you at some technical information available, And then really, I want to spend a bit of time identifying common road safety audit issues for pedestrians. I will use some crash investigation case studies, but they're to highlight you being, the risk. So in the future, you can pick these before crashes happen, and some terminology around pedestrian safety. This group's such a nice, sharing, caring group with flagging every wally as they pop up. I like it. Okay.
I'd be keeping it to myself, but that's just
Okay.
very caring and sharing.
There they are. There are 4 groups of pedestrians at greatest risk, and I'm going to pop them in here. We've got elderly, young, disabled, and I'll give a prize to the person who can tell us what the 4th group is. And I think Mitchell was in there super fast with intoxicated or drunk, and that is correct. And in fact, intoxicated pedestrians are at most our highest risk highest risk pedestrian category by a long shot in terms of the number killed and seriously injured. At a per individual, per road user kilometre walked or whatever, some of the elderly and young and disabled emerge pretty high. But the amount of intoxicated pedestrian trauma out there is staggering across the world, actually. Now, you might think, well, what can we do about it? Well, we can do stuff about it from an infrastructure perspective and the management of the road and the management of the road system, the way it functions. We can't just bury our head in the sand and say, well, they shouldn't be intoxicated and doing stupid things around the road. We've got to, say, what can we do about this? And I'll get into that and show you some things later. But there are these basic strategies for how to think about pedestrian safety. And that's segregation, separation, or integration. Okay, so let's go through those one at a time. Segregation in this road safety sense is really to say, this road user over here, this road user here, they shall not have the same area. And freeways are a classic example there, where it's very much vehicles only. No pedestrians out there, although interestingly we do see a surprising amount of pedestrian trauma on motorways, freeways and the like, due to predominantly broken down vehicles, people wandering around their car. I did a fair bit of a crash analysis for the Monash Freeway, and I was just staggered by the number of, again, intoxicated people getting out of taxis in the night in the motorway. Probably I don't know what's going like. Well, I suspect I know what's going on. They're throwing up, or they're using the toilet, or these sorts of things. And then the incidents happen. We've got the high speed is not an environment for pedestrian. So that's a little aside. But generally, the concept is let's give them each their own space. And malls or malls, depending on where you come. Bendigo's the only place I know that calls them a mal, but maybe others do. Malls, obviously, they were a road environment, or they sort of are, but it's all pedestrians. Maybe the occasional service vehicle to pick up the rubbish and the like. So that's segregation. Separation can be done in time or in space. And separation in time is really just using the same bit of road at one point in time for pedestrians, and then at one point in time for vehicles, like pedestrian crossings, signalised pedestrian crossings, or even school crossings or the like, all operating in that separation in time style thinking. And then, other types of crossings where you can cross in all different directions, like this one. And I will give a prize for the person who can tell me the official name for this type of crossing, where you can cross in all directions, or a type of crossing. Now, I see people, I think, are putting in scramble, are they, Catherine?
Yeah, Rosie came in with the scramble and Matthew.
Yep. So that's the commonly used one. It has an actual official name, which is not scramble. I mean, most people, scramble is a pretty good answer. In fact, you could probably give a prize to Rosie for that.
Yeah, Rosie was very quick there.
But I am actually looking for another name for this crossing type, which this will be good for your traffic engineering trivia night. Should have it? No, it doesn't look like anybody. It's one of these ones you know or you don't. It's called a Barnes dance.
Yes.
And it must be like Mr. or Mrs. Barnes was the inventor of it, and they did that. But that's what it's always called. What you'll notice there is I've put a little link to a snippet. So we have these little links, as I think I mentioned in the PDFs. You can click on that. It'll take you to one. It talks a little bit about, delay, safety, which crash types are lessened, which are increased by this sort of thing. But I just, pop that one in out of interest. Now, anything for me to catch up on there, Catherine?
No, I was just going to add to the freeway issue with pedestrians is, the intoxication and, why people are pulling over on the side of the road. I think you captured that well, Ken. But also just people, I guess, motorcyclists or anyone that loses something out the window and then they stop to pull over to pick it up. And there's been so many fatalities in that situation as well. Just purely thinking about that object on the freeway and pulling over to pick it up.
Yes, absolutely. Great point. I mean, tens of thousands of incidents a year, which are flagged by that sort of stuff out there on the freeways. Okay, so let's go with separation now and talk a little bit about separation in space now, and that's your footpaths, your median islands, and these sorts of things where you're giving that ability for people to be separated by space. Now, I mean, segregation sort of a big separation in space, really, isn't it? But this is where it's generally in that road environment, and you're separating out bits of the road for different road users as you possibly can. And there's different guidance around there talking about different things. I popped this one up, just snipped it out of 1742, or a very old version of 1742. It doesn't matter. But things like thinking about the amount of space and the width of a pedestrian refuge, for example, you can look at these standards and guidelines, and that gives you some good guidance. I mean, for me, I like to just look at it and say, well, the analogy I like to run with is, if a father or mother is pushing a pram, they shouldn't have to decide whether their kid or themselves needs to stand in live traffic. That's a pretty good gauge for you. Some people like the bike. If a bike is propped there, they shouldn't have a tire in the lane. But there is some actual specific guidance on that. And also, we think about mobility devices, and we're getting the emergence of e-scooters and all sorts of other things we categorize as pedestrians, electric skateboards or hoverboards, you name it. It's all coming out, and we generally categorize all this as pedestrians, but we do need to think about pedestrians as not just being people walking, but some wheeled pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, on these devices and the like. And that then adds to your sort of thinking around pram ramps, accessibility, not making them drive along the road to find a point where they can get out of the road environment. And you do sort of start to see some of those presenting a form of risk in the road environment. So separation using overpasses, underpasses and the like, obviously, if people are using that, it's a very safe environment. But I do stress if people are using it. It sort of sometimes is used as the ultimate, people put it forward as the ultimate safety treatment for pedestrians. This one, certainly, you wouldn't say that, because we know a lot of people use just crossing the road. A lot of our high risk intoxicated pedestrians are certainly just darting across the road. It does provide assistance for some of our pedestrians. School kids are pretty good usually at that, but you know, put yourself in the shoes of a pedestrian coming up to this. They're going to walk all the way, you know, what are you going to, up there, there, all the way down there. It's a big effort. And then going to dart across the road. And we've got to, as auditors, put ourselves in the realistic shoes of the road user. What are they actually going to do? And can we alter this so it is designed better, more friendly, or can we, you know, make it better? Jump in whenever you want, Catherine, with questions. I'm going to have a break shortly, I think, for a stretch and fill up the coffee for the afternoon and things like that. But yeah, if anything's popped in for me to deal with, let me know.
Oh, we're good for now, Ken.
Okay, well, maybe I'll ask them a question. So this is a regulatory sign in Australia. It's used, a shared zone, 10 kilometre per hour shared zone. Tell me, what is the road rule around this? Obviously, you have to drive 10 kilometres per hour or less. But what is the road rule?
We've got pets have right of way, equal right of way between people and cars.
Well, the PEDs have right of way is correct. So pedestrians have right of way throughout this whole zone. So it's essentially like a big pedestrian crossing, okay, for whatever that area is, that zone that you're treating. Okay, but now I do have another question though for the group. This one's going to be a little bit trickier. There is some guidance on creation of a shared zone. Now, there is some specific jurisdictional guidance. New South Wales, I know, has some very particular guidance on what they would say for a shared zone. But what I'm going to talk about is sort of a step up from that, from the principles of a shared zone. When you are designing or creating or assessing a shared zone, what is the sort of principle you would like to see out of the infrastructure? What are the principles you'd like to see out of that infrastructure? Have a think about that. Or there's a particular, you know, thing, and it's actually written into a lot of the guidance. It says, you know, the road environment should, in these shared zones. Any ideas?
Good sight lines and visibility, some road treatments, I'm assuming some local area traffic management, and only use when the demand is high for pedestrians. High activity areas. I like this one, make it uncomfortable for motorists to travel any faster than walking pace. I like that.
Let's give that one a prize, because that's sort of close. Like what everybody has said above that, before that is good stuff. It's all really good thinking. It's a bit more, as I was talking about that, the specific mechanics, the principle we're talking about. The principle that's usually documented in standards and in guidelines around shared zones is you want the road environment not to look like a road, okay? And through that, it makes it uncomfortable. It makes vehicles slower and the like. So really, if a great shared zone basically involves a driver going, am I even allowed to be here? I mean, is this, you know, And you see really good ones, examples around Australia and New Zealand, where they're, you know, different surface treatments, cobblestones. It's, you know, isn't line marked like a road. Maybe it's got like water fountains popping up in different places and things like that. It's really mixed. Doesn't look like a road environment. So that's the key. So then, like, here's an example of a shared zone, which I think has some good elements and some elements I think that it can be improved, and auditors could probably suggest. So let's have another little look here. You can see there that they've tried to get rid of the curbing, change the surface from the sort of asphalt to more of a concretey color. So it's a different sort of look to that specific area. And they've got the signs up there. The things that sort of now bring it back to looking like a road, though, it's line marked like a road. The parking's all, it's all in a straight line and the like. And they put the give way to pedestrian sign there, which actually shouldn't be required if people know the road rules, but not too many people know the road rules on this one, so they've done that.
Just a comment from the group there, Ken. Just that even if a pedestrian does have the priority, the collision is always going to be pretty bad. So it's just a comment which I thought was worth raising.
Yeah, that's right. I suppose what you do with that information is key there. And I mean, we'd have a safer road network if nobody was allowed to walk anywhere or ride anywhere or the like, because, you know, the cars are generally, or the vulnerable road users are one that's getting injured in those incidents. But we're trying to create cities that are active, that are livable, that are, you know, really these interacting communities, and walking and cycling and the like is critical to achieving those outcomes. And as a result of that, you actively want to change some roads that have been identified in sort of a good movement and place assessment or the like, that are these areas where you want the activity, you want the interaction, you want the ability for pedestrians to, you know, freely permeate across areas and the like, that it's not then that they never have priority and they're always waiting to cross the road because the cars have priority and, you know, all of that. So it's quite a complex transport planning sort of challenge. Certainly as auditors, and I've got some slides coming up, as long as we're clear who's got priority, we're in a good position.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Okay. So we're into some specific things as auditors. You know, after this course, you're going to hopefully be part of audit teams. You're out there. Okay. You're going to be thinking about pedestrians and their safety. Let's have a look at a few things that sort of come up quite often for pedestrian safety. The first one I want to do is sight lines to pedestrian crossings. Okay. And sight lines to pedestrian crossings, slip lanes are a good example. And I'll probably, I'll do this one and then we will take our break. So a slip lane is a really interesting spot for pedestrians. And I have put a little link to a safe system snippet on slip lanes and pedestrians because it's quite the topic of interest in our industry at the moment. Lots of opinion and conflicting research and all sorts of things. But certainly, okay, as a driver, if you're driving up along here, where are you going to be looking? Well, you are looking to your right because you want to check if it's okay to put the foot down and go. And if a pedestrian is coming along from here, there is going to be a point where you are driving, if you're the driver or the driver is driving, and they're not looking at where they're going because they're looking to see if they've got the gap. And it's right at the point where the pedestrians are crossing. So combined, that makes a nasty, nasty little spot or the potential for some injury. So that's something to flag and think about. And And maybe as we have our little break here, I'll let you have a think about, well, what could we alter here to make it safer for pedestrians? And there's quite a few things you could do. But let's take 5 minutes now. And I'll give you a good 5-minute break. Have a stretch, drink a coffee up, have a think about what could we alter here to make it safer for pedestrians. There's some easy stuff to do, and there's some probably more expensive stuff. But then jot a few of those down. Back in 5 minutes.
I think I'll top up my tea.
We'll get back to it shortly. I'll just have a quick look here at what some of the ideas were that we could do to improve safety on slip lanes. So we've got some discussion around advanced warning signs. So that's, yes, that's a possibility. Raised safety platforms, priority crossing. Well, I love the raised idea. And that's one that seemed to come out fairly clearly across all of the conflicting research, I suppose. If it was a raised crossing point, it was going to be safer. So that's a really, really great one. Signalising the crossing point there, the slip lane crossing, also probably a good option. It is better adhered to by the drivers when the red's there and the pedestrians are, it's clearer to them that they have priority at some points in time and not others. And that sort of continued on there, I think. I personally, and now this is where the research starts to get a bit conflicting. I personally actually prefer no pedestrian crossing to a pedestrian crossing there. So pedestrians are, I suppose, looking more at this particular location. As I mentioned, I love areas where pedestrians do have priority, but this one's got some thorns to it.
I think the other one too, Ken, which is you see quite often is vegetation. Like, you know, when it's new, it's in its early stages, it's low, but over time it'll grow, and then that means ongoing maintenance programs. So, you know, let's just stick with the low shrubs at the very beginning and don't plant things that grow so tall to obstruct sight lines.
Yeah, it's a wonderful point you bring up. And certainly as part of that detailed design road safety audit, you want to see the landscaping plan and what they've got in order. And you can see this one here, as exactly as you're saying, it's starting to grow up now to hide pedestrians. Certainly a little smaller pedestrian than that would be completely hidden, wouldn't they? And that one would be hard to see. So yeah, opening up those sight lines certainly helps, because the approaching driver for a decent period of it is going to be looking forward. And so I think it's a great point. And that covers off, like that reoccurs quite a bit in road safety audits. Okay. Another thing to have a think about is this swept path of larger vehicles and then sweeping over pedestrian areas. And Reese Gunther, who's going to present on Tuesday, is going to talk a fair bit about swept paths of larger vehicles and where they track and dragging the back end around. But we recently had a pedestrian fatality, or might have been a multiple fatality involving a larger vehicle on again a relatively new intersection, sweeping and tracking over the area pedestrians were waiting just like this. So this one, the bus seems to be doing pretty well, but certainly that is something that at the design stage we'd be hoping you would pick up and we would be able to rectify before it's built. One thing that we need to do as road safety auditors is not just look at what's there, but also look at what's not there. And so things like this, where there are not pedestrian facilities, like a footpath or a shed path or the like, that can create risky scenarios where pedestrians will walk on the road. So there's a pedestrian there, you can see, and it's okay because it's fairly dry, but you could imagine that when it's very wet, it's muddy, or it's a mobility scooter, or somebody in a wheelchair, or pushing a shopping trolley, or whatever it is, they're really going to have to walk on the shoulder there. And this particular bit of road was becoming a truck bypass, and they didn't have any upgrades planned for this particular section of the road. And it was just flagged there as a bit of a risk. And there's another photo And did they get the gap in the roundabout sign right? Yes, they did. There you go. You're never going to be able to drive past a roundabout sign or walk past a roundabout sign again without looking for gaps. Okay, so here's one, and some of you will know this spot quite well. It's in Footscray, but this is a great example of pedestrians and their desire lines. And desire line is a term that is very commonly used when we're talking about pedestrians and pedestrian safety. And the pedestrian's desire line is where they're from, where they want to go, and it's the straight line, okay? Now, pedestrians are the road user group least likely to deviate off their desire line, okay? And here's an example where we've got, the crossing point, and we've got this pedestrian wants to go to the station, obviously, and somebody's put some fencing up, but that pedestrian will walk a little bit on the road on the wrong side of the fence there to avoid slightly deviating off her desire line. And we need to just be really conscious of this as road safety auditors and really anybody planning any infrastructure to think about these sort of things. A lot of the time I see pedestrian fencing going in places where it's really going to trap pedestrians on the road. They will walk on the road rather than, so, it's trying to get them to go to this point, but what it's doing for some pedestrians is exactly this. And pedestrian fencing, I'm not a fan of it in a lot of situations. I don't like the idea of sort of corralling pedestrians like sheep and the traffic engineer sort of pushing them into different particular spots. But we've got, pedestrians, and they should be able to permeate if we can do it possibly safely. The places are, and there's the increased risk in some applications of pedestrian fencing, and you as an auditor need to think that through on a case-by-case basis, and desire lines and volumes of the pedestrians and where people are going to go. The places I really do like pedestrian fencing, though, are outside a drinking establishment, like a pub or a bar, and outside a school gate. And it's not actually to corral them to cross at certain points at all. It's a containment device. And I've done now 2 coroner's reports. So, investigated 2 particular pedestrian crashes involving pedestrians being killed outside pubs. And they basically have been, one of them was a altercation, a fight of a few people, and was sort of, it spilled out onto the road, and one was struck. And the other was, well, it was a bit unclear from the reports. It looked like they just sort of fell out onto the road as they came out down the steps. And so the fence is really to just sort of contain in that sense, rather than, to get them to cross at the particular point you want. Anyway, I just flag that pedestrian fencing can present risks, increased risks in some situations, but there's some spots where it is quite beneficial. And I saw this one on LinkedIn, and I thought, oh, it's a good description there of desire line, and what we design and what the user experience is going to be, and that's a pedestrian desire line. I have talked. So I was talking to somebody from a local government once who said that they often will put sort of their parkland out there and then let it go for a while, see where all the goat tracks appear, and then put their paths there. And I was like, wow, that is real user-centric design, isn't it? Rather than sort of designing where you want them to go and trying to force them into that. And lots more examples of that. Catherine.
There's plenty of those goat tracks around Myrtleford. So
yes.
Yeah, need to lobby my local government.
Good. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, and that, you know, pedestrian desire line, you can sort of step that up to a larger transport planning perspective. And if you're separating communities with road projects or the like, they will make their way where they want to go. So sure, you can build a road through here, but if there's the residential over this side and the commercial district over this side, this is the kind of stuff we'll get. This is obviously an international example. We do see that, you know, occurring around Australia and New Zealand, where there's a particular attractor and a generator of pedestrian movement, and we see some pretty wild stuff happening. Hopefully, we think it through in the planning stage. As auditors, and particularly in those feasibility style early audits, these are the kind of things you can be alerting, identifying, thinking about, and hopefully facilities built to cater for this. A couple of little case studies, again, unfortunately brought about because of incidents, but I display them because, yeah, it's something visual we can see, and for you to think about this in future scenarios where incidents haven't happened. And this one, okay, we're looking down a road. There's been some fairly recent changes, alterations. This next photo is taken from just behind here, just near the little hazard board sign there. Okay, so that's the pedestrian's view. So who has right of way? Who has right of way there? It's not a shared zone, but it's sort of starting to give that impression. And interestingly, you stand out there and I witness both the pedestrians doing what these two gentlemen are doing and sort of walking across, feeling they had priority. And I saw vehicles sort of going through thinking that they had priority. And under the road rules, the vehicle drivers have priority because it's not marked as a particular pedestrian crossing with the correct markings or anything like that. But just the way it's sort of been designed and presented, it kind of feels like the pedestrians should be walking across. And that's, unfortunately, there was just a very rare time where both the driver and the pedestrian thought they had the priority, and we had the incident. So the moral of that really is clarity of priority is a really good thing in pedestrian safety. And so as auditors, I want you to think, is it going to be clear for each road user who has priority here? And not just from maybe the sign, but also from the form of the infrastructure. These sorts of areas are particularly confusing for priority, and I think there's a lot we can do to rectify this. So this local government's decided to paint it yellow. I think that's it's okay. But interestingly, our road rules are just ridiculous in these circumstances, so it doesn't quite help us. Pedestrians have priority for any vehicle turning in, but they actually don't have priority against vehicles coming out. So technically, they only have priority halfway across the road. It's bizarre. It's very badly understood by both the walking and driving public, and it can present issues. So where I like to go is the clear pedestrian priority or the clear vehicle priority, but the clear pedestrian priority to me is, you know, you raise this as a threshold treatment and you actually provide your pedestrian priority. Now, the road authorities can get a little bit narky at that. Their arguments don't stand up usually because, well, it's usually a state road authority saying, oh, we're worried about the impact on the functioning of the arterial road, which is this road. You sort of go, well, if people follow the road rules, then it's no different to the impact that it should be. But anyway, I'll get into that. So then this is an interesting one where you've got the really good sort of threshold treatment. It's raised, it's going to slow vehicles. I kind of like also the little area that they've provided here to prop, so a vehicle can make that turn, but also slow it there. But what interestingly came up, and I wasn't involved in this, I was just out having a look at it with some colleagues. The road safety audit came back in and said, well, the raised crossing point here and the piano key markings, which I had on the design, white piano key markings, may give the impression of a pedestrian crossing. And so their sort of suggestion was to make it yellow so it's looks less like a pedestrian crossing. I kind of go, I think we're giving people a little more credit there to understand that white is more likely to be regulatory than yellow. You know, it's probably a little bit much to that. So I think that these sorts of things, if you're not going to provide a full priority crossing for pedestrians, is better. Keeping that black surface across the road, it's clearly a road, right? Having the raised is great, but the vehicles are going to be really influenced by that raised. Maybe this could be pulled back a little bit even. So it's very clear, and you keep your center line marking through the road. It's quite clear to us, pedestrian approaches that, okay, that's a road, and then I'm going. Or you really create that dedicated pedestrian crossing. Prize for the first person who tells me where this is, if they can. It's coming out of an airport. Airports are an absolute gold mine for road safety audit training content. I think it's because they slip through the net of any state or local road authority actually having to review road upgrade designs because of their federal jurisdictional powers or the like. It is Launceston. Well done. First one that got that can have a prize. It's Launceston. And I always sort of, every time I step out there, I sort of have a look at it. I did mention it at one point to somebody. But yeah, it's unclear, isn't it? Because you got vehicles coming up here and there's this bit and the priority. It's actually vehicle priority, but it'd be pretty hard to tell, especially if you're running to meet somebody and you got off a plane and you're running late, and it's all a little bit of a mess. It's raised, so that's certainly going to be helpful to slow vehicles down. But why not just make that pedestrian priority anyway? And people do often get into this trap of areas they would like pedestrians to cross because it's, they've decided, well, that's actually a safe spot because it's got good sight lines and everything like that. So doing these sort of half, or these surface treatments to say, cross here. And yeah, that's good from one perspective, but it can confuse priority. And sometimes we have to take our very, specific hat off where we go, well, it's obviously not pedestrian priority because it doesn't have the white lines and the correct signage and the like, and say, well, could somebody be confused in that on that? Anyway, I've probably driven home that point enough and saying we want to see the pedestrian walk symbols in Australia. This is the requirement, pedestrian walk signals and the white and the white stripes on the road. So this one, it's got the sign, but missed out on the line, so it didn't quite meet the requirement. That's what we want to be seeing. Anyway, that's in there. I'm going to jump on to just showing a few other Tasmanian examples of things that highlight the need for that post-opening road safety audit again, I think. So pedestrian upgrade, trying to make the wharf area down there in Hobart more pedestrian friendly and all the like, and they started to deploy a whole lot of pedestrian bits and pieces, and really a post-opening road safety audit really should have been done. I don't know whether it's designed like this, but so anyway, it's just incorrect, I suppose, application. These are not signs to tell you where to go. I mean, that's what they're using them for, to say, hey, pedestrians walk through here. Those are pedestrian crossing warning signs to tell you a pedestrian crossing is coming up. And so not being used correctly at all. Is that a risk? Yeah, probably not, or low. It's just wrong, but there's a risk there. This one, just around the corner from that, I think this one does present a pretty big risk, or a bigger risk. No, I don't know. Speeds are fairly low. So, but the installer here, let's assume it wasn't designed that way, thought that the pedestrian crossing signs were to be faced at the pedestrians, to tell them to cross there, rather than faced at the vehicles approaching the crossing point to warn or to tell them that that's that regulatory crossing that they have to stop for pedestrians. And so you can, these are the things you sort of scratch your head. How does that actually happen? How do they build that? But unfortunately, we do see a fair bit of that. Similar sort of things. We just go, wow, how? So the importance again of that check. Okay, that's a little one for you to comment on. How are we going on time? Pretty well. Okay, this is a nice little seaside village, and this pedestrian crossing has been there for quite a while. But I want you to imagine, oh no, it hasn't been. I want you to imagine you had got this at a design stage. Okay, so you were asked to do the design stage road safety audit. It's not built, but they're saying we're going to build some curb out stands, we're going to do a bit of landscaping, put some bins, we're going to put a pedestrian crossing, we're going to do some light, make sure the lighting's good. And what do you think could be just tweaked a little bit here to make this a safer outcome? Now, I'm going to just say, well, actually, I'll let you go yourself. Yeah, these sort of big yellow lines are trying to activate the street a bit, make it a little slower and those sort of things. But I'll let you work it out. And what are you going to tweak? What are you going to tweak? What are you going to change? What are you going to recommend as the changes? So I see a few people identifying some good little risks. How are you going to slightly alter things?
Some good comments there, Ken.
Yep.
The line marking is rubbish.
Okay.
Made me giggle.
I'm just having a look now as we go.
It's just total confusion to me.
Okay, some good stuff there. I'm liking what I'm seeing there. So some people have picked out so certainly it'd be nice to have this raised. That's always a good thing, but that can add cost and drainage issues and those sorts of things. But I certainly like the idea of that. It's just going to keep everything slow through there. Yeah, people have some concerns about the line marking. Yeah, maybe that's an issue. The particular one that I was interested in, and it's been picked up by a few people, is the point here of the bin and the vegetation and everything blocking the sight lines of a vehicle approaching this way. And it does. And again, if you had a smaller pedestrian, yeah, maybe a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old or the like, and they know they're cross at the crossing and off they go, they're hidden there, aren't they, by the bin and the vegetation. And if you can get to these at a design stage, and the simple thing would be, well, maybe the bin doesn't even go close to the road, but having this on the departure side, the vegetation and the bin on the departure side there opens up sight lines, kind of like that one. It's better, you can really see that from a distance. And really, in the scheme of things, that's going to be no more costs, no difference, but it's a safer outcome. And again, so we can add value. It may never result cause a death or serious injury, but it's a risk that's sort of sitting there that a tweak at design stage could have reduced. Okay, I'm going to give another little case study here, another coroner investigation we were doing and reporting on. So the incident occurred with a gentleman who stepped out from exactly where this photo is taken here, and was struck and killed by a vehicle going through here. So let me show you what you see, what the driver sort of sees. And so this is the approach. So that other photo was taken right there. So that's and then that's stepping back a little bit. And we've got high-speed road out here, slip lane. And so James has already picked one of the factors that may have contributed to this. It's very hard. We didn't get CCTV footage or things like that. But you're trying to analyze and piece this together. And that's not an audit thing. I mean, that's a real crash investigation thing. You know, auditors, we've got to be trying to pick these before anything happens. But if you're out there, and this is a real classic where the pictures do not tell the story very well at all, I couldn't do that. You've got the ticking of the thing, you've got the green man, you've got another green man. It kind of really draws you. You're sort of looking out at that, and it draws you to go. And that's what's happened. So as that's going, priority for pedestrians throughout there. This bit's not priority. And really, it kind of, I'm pretty confident that played a role in this one. So again, it's just thinking, could we have picked that up at design stage, picked it up early before this incident had to happen? And afterwards, they've altered it, obviously, to now be a raised pedestrian crossing, very clear who's got priority, raised, kind of slow vehicles coming in, you know, but we'd like to have seen that from when those signals went in from the start.
I just want to add that I was in that situation where I was looking ahead, and I was actually on my way to a job interview. And so my mind was very much focused on the task. And the ticking went, and the green man was ahead, and I went to step out, and I just happened to look to my right, and there was a bus, and it was so close. Like, it was probably the scariest situation I've been in from a pedestrian perspective. So can definitely relate to that issue.
Yeah. And I suppose the challenge we have as auditors, and, you know, personally, I find it like a puzzle. You know, so it's like solving a puzzle, and there may or may not actually be an answer. You know, these are the challenges, but we've got to try to predict how road users may be fooled by the roads, may be distracted, may be seeing through, and the like. A good question there. Did you get the job?
I had a story. I did get the job. Yeah, I had a good story to tell.
Yeah,
I almost didn't make it.
And was the job with the bus company that nearly took you? No.
Yeah. It was a transport company, so yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let me change tack a bit, because I want to give time to introduce the exercise we're going to do in a good way. Okay. There is confusion out there in industry about a road safety audit and a DDA audit. It's called that in most jurisdictions, or Disability Discrimination Act, or a similar sort of investigation into meeting the disability codes and standards and all of those things. So those are different beasts. And it's important to clarify that with anybody asking you to do an audit, especially if you know they maybe aren't familiar with all this stuff or the like. Because as a road safety auditor, we don't expect you to know that code in detail, or that standard in detail, or the requirements of the Act and those sort of things. We don't expect you to be measuring the height of the handrails and the grade of different bits to check it's all applicable. That's important stuff, right? But it's not actually our particular role. Where we would step into that is if we believe that particular thing will bring us into a risk level of death and serious injury that lands us on that matrix of risk that I showed before. Okay. Now, there's plenty of things out there where I have looked at them as an auditor and gone, I don't think that's probably doesn't meet that code, right? And sometimes I won't even bother putting it in the audit because I go, it probably doesn't meet that code, but it's never going to cause an actual crash. But sometimes I will put it in just as a to note, maybe at the end or with the email with the audit report, and just say, oh, by the way, your tactile ground surface indicators weren't correct in this bit or the like. But it's not that's not what it is. If you notice it, you may make a recommendation in your audit report to say, ensure you have a DDA audit undertaken, or somebody reviews it from that perspective, or you may actually put that in as an issue. Maybe the tactile ground surface indicators align into the middle of the intersection. You go, actually, that could be bad, and I'll put that in and rank it, whatever you believe that is, as a risk. But very important that all these things are right and rectified, and there's a legislation around that. The amount of death and serious injury as a result of that actually, within pedestrian trauma in Australia and New Zealand is very low. And again, not to say it's not very important, but I'm just saying in the magnitude of death and serious injury, it's actually quite low associated with that. I might jump through these two because there's a little exercise that I want you to do. First, what I'm going to do here is explain the scenario here, and then you're going to sort of be the auditors. It's a little bit more crash investigation, but the principles are good. Okay, so what we've got here is an intersection. It's how it exists, and what I'm going to, at this intersection, there have been 5 pedestrian crashes, 5 or 6, I can't remember. 4 serious injuries in the same exact way, same crash. Okay, now that's a pretty good indication there's an infrastructure issue going on there. So we're using this to get you in the process of thinking through risks, but I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you. And Catherine shortly will put up a little poll in a second after I explain this. But what I've done is given you 5 choices. Now, you're not going to be marked on this. The polls are anonymous, so you're going to have your guess. But you're going to look at each of these crashes that I'm going to describe and say, yeah, I think that's the one where 4 people have been seriously injured. 4 pedestrians have been seriously injured. So these are crash diagram notations. So a dotted line convention is that's the pedestrian, and a solid line is the vehicle. So crash number 1, vehicle turning left into the pedestrian crossing the service road entry at that point. Number 2, the pedestrian crossing at the signalized crossing and the vehicle turning there. 3, the vehicle approaching in the slip lane and the pedestrian crossing from the island out. 4, the same thing, except for from this one with a slightly different configuration, the vehicle on the slip lane, the pedestrian walking out. Or 5, the vehicle turning right in to this and the pedestrian walking along the footpath. So have a think about which of these, what are the drivers seeing, what are the pedestrians seeing? And I'll ask Catherine to pop up the poll. And now remember, you can move the poll around your screen if it's in the way of what you're looking at. And then just have your guess at number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That's not the poll, that's session 1's poll. Let's,
Oh, sorry. Let me end that one.
and just use the drop down menu at the top. I'll grab it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Ken.
You got it? No, I'll do it.
No, sorry.
Okay, launching that one. Okay, so hopefully you're having your guess and you're thinking about that.
Where's this intersection, Ken?
This is in Cranbourne.
Okay.
That's in Victoria, for those not from Victoria. Quite a number of my examples are from Victoria. I've done 80% of my audits in my life in Victoria. Amazingly, that other 20%, you really do see the same issues being built all over the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now we've got a few others having a guess, scratching their head.
Yeah. And it's a suburban area, isn't it? Cranbourne.
It is. It's in sort of growth areas of metropolitan Melbourne. It's
yeah.
How are we going there? We've got most people how to go.
Most people have, yeah. Couple more.
Give them 3 more seconds. Have a guess. You don't have to lose marks if you get it wrong. No.
All right.
Okay, let's end that one. And let's display the results.
Sure thing. Here we go.
Okay, so most people going for 1 or 2. Interesting. Okay, let's get rid of that. Well done. And, it's a tough one because I intentionally picked all scenarios that present some form of risk to pedestrians. Okay, so the one that actually had all of them, these crashes, was number 2. Now, why is that? Very good thing to think about. Well, the reason for this is that as a vehicle is approaching here, again, they're looking out to their right, aren't they? And this one is a bit odd. They're turning onto a pedestrian crossing. Now, that is a very weird configuration. Let's have a look at another slip lane. Let's look at this slip lane over here, which is where the slip lane, they don't turn onto a pedestrian crossing, do they? Nor do they on this one. So what this actually should have done is gone to there and then to there. And it's for exactly this reason why that's your sort of standard layout of a slip lane and your islands, is because you do not want people turning onto that. So that very odd configuration and resulting in a lot of serious injury. Now, this has been rectified. I haven't put it into this presentation. I have a picture of how it's been rectified, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty much what I said there. A little extension of the island, straight out to there, actually closed off that as well. But the point is that this should never have been built like this. And an auditor would have really, we hope, been able to pick this up. Now, this might get you quite concerned because it's quite a bit of responsibility there if you're an auditor and you've been handed the design of a new signalised intersection, and if you miss something like this, it's people's lives we're talking about. But I want to sort of reassure you a little bit that if you systematically work through this, utilising the prompt lists that we have, but also doing a little trick, which I encourage, especially for new auditors, you'll probably pick this up. But that trick is to at least in your mind, looking at the design or while you're out there, you have to make every movement that every road user is going to make in your head. So what you do is you put yourself back here as a driver in your mind, and you drive up and you go, okay, I'm going to do a right turn. So you're driving up to the right, and then you say, is that all clear? Can I see everything like that? Okay, what if there was a vehicle coming this way? Am I going to see them? Are they going to be blocking the sightlines to another vehicle? Okay, what if I get over here? Oh, okay, it's going to be pedestrian. Is that phase? Is that phasing going to separate me from these, or is that, am I going to have to make a judgment there? Then you go, okay, well, what if there's a motorcyclist? What if there's a cyclist around? What about pedestrians going to be crossing here? Okay, so this is all for just a vehicle turning right there, but you'll do it then for going straight. Then you'll do it for going left into this one. Then you'll do it for going left into this one. And I think when you get to the point of doing left into this one, you're going to be going, okay, I'm driving up to this one. I want to turn left here. I'm looking out there now. What if a pedestrian? And then hopefully you'll arrive at that as you systematically work through this. And you'd want to be doing it for bikes as well. Okay, you're back here now. You're on a bike. I'm on a bike and I want to go straight through. Oh, well, vehicles are going to be turning over me here. Or I want to go right. How do I do a right turn? So you'll really work through all of that. Another couple of little points. You want to think about trying to get out there on site when there are big bursts of different road users, such as end of school, where there's lots of school kids. How does it operate then? If you're there's a local footy ground or something like that, how does it operate when there's a big footy crowd? And if you can look at it then, great. Maybe off season, maybe impossible to do that, but those sorts of things are important to look at. And then when we're making recommendations, lots of different pedestrian facilities available and different ways to think about it. You've probably seen a lot of them. Some you may not be as aware of, things like the Puffin crossing, which is the pedestrian user friendly intelligent crossing. It's an acronym. And that's basically, when you walk up to a house at night and the lights come on automatically. Well, it's the same sensor in the put to the signals that will hold the lights red while there's movement on the crossing. Okay, so wait till it's clear. So there's a Puffin crossing. At some point in the traffic engineering space, somebody decided that bird theme would be done for pedestrian crossing facilities. So there's the Puffin crossing, there's a toucan crossing, and this is more a legal regulatory thing in some jurisdictions. Toucan crossing is for pedestrians and cyclists to be able to cross. Toucan cross, not making up this stuff. These are it's what it is. Toucan cross. That just gives legal ability for the bike rider to ride across the crossing. Pelican crossing is a pedestrian light controlled crossing. So that's when it's a red light for drivers. They see a red and then it goes to a flashing orange or flashing yellow. Flashing. And that's just basically to warn, to say, check there's no pedestrians still on the crossing, and then it goes to green. Pedestrian light controlled crossing. This was, I saw the website, like, world's funniest signs or something like that, and it had Pelican. It makes complete sense to me, but obviously the community think that one's quite funny. And Pegasus crossings. Pegasus crossings are, for horses, because a horse is a vehicle. Again, this is probably just road rule, conformity style stuff, but it's a vehicle. Also the height across, but a horse is a vehicle. Actually, on that, did you know that it is illegal to ride a horse when you're intoxicated? Because that is actually, being intoxicated in control of a vehicle, drink driving. But it is not illegal to ride an intoxicated horse. I'm sure everybody's rolling on the floor with laughter. Well, it's actually true.
I'm on mute.
Yeah.
Promise I was laughing.
No getting horses intoxicated, though. That's probably the illegal part, unless it drinks itself. Anyway, sorry. Okay, where are we? Okay, prompt lists in the Austroads guides. Okay, they're really good. We updated them. Lots more stuff in there for pedestrians and cyclists and the like. You can really work through those to help get you thinking about lots of the things that I've been talking about and other stuff. So you've got a copy of those and you'll be using those as you go. I don't think we'll do quiz time there, Catherine, if that's all right, because I want to explain this activity. It's actually another assignment. So sorry, you've got your research assignment, which hopefully you're finishing, and I'm hoping you're not spending many hours on it. It's really you want you to investigate it a little bit, put something fun together, and get it out there. But this one you're going to do. You've got a bit of time for this one till later next week. But this is a little bit of practice in writing up audit findings, and we're going to use some 360-degree video footage and a bit of a road design. So let me show you what you're going to be given. You're going to be given the upgrade designs for the removal of a roundabout and the installation of a set of traffic signals. And you can see there it's got, so the black lines are what they're planning to build. The green underneath, that's what's there at the moment, okay? So what you do is audit what is going to be built. So you've got to imagine it all built now, and what are the crashes that you're predicting may happen, okay? So that's the design. Now, I know some of you are going to be very comfortable looking at a design like this and knowing exactly what's happening and what's, what everything means, and that's all fine. For those who aren't, you're going to have to take a little bit of time to really look at it and think about, okay, I see. They're building an island there, and then that's an island there. The island used to be there. Okay, the roundabout's gone now. Okay, it's a signal line intersection. Really working that through in your mind. You've got to get clear, first of all, what's going to be built, and then how are people going to use it, and what are the problems that it's going to create. So there's three pages of design. Okay. The next thing that you've got, and this is where you can, we're trying to give you a little insight into site visits without putting you out onto a site at this stage. So what we've done is we've filmed using a 360-degree camera from each of these locations. So you can simply click on one of these locations and it will take you to, actually I'll probably just be able to do it here, won't I? It will take you to a little bit of a YouTube on that. Now, I'm just going to bring that in here. Here we go. Okay, so I've clicked on that and it's got me to here, and then you can move around either with your mouse if you're using a desktop version and look at what's going on, look at the traffic lanes. So you get about a couple of minutes of footage of each one. You have a look over there. Okay, that's a bus stop and like. So you've got those. If you have got your 3D goggles, which we sent you in your pack, and you put those together, you can do this on your phone, put them onto your eyes, and then just move your head around and it'll move as you're going. So you can do that for a few of the locations and get a good feel for the site for what it is, existing conditions. Now, remember, this is the existing conditions. And what we're asking you to audit is not what's there at the moment, but what is going to be there when they build this. Okay, so why do you need to look at the existing conditions? Well, you need to understand what is the land use, what is the pedestrian activity, where are people going, what are all these properties? Where might people be moving? How does that tie in? What's the configuration? Some issues you'll pick up just from desktop looking at this design. Some you may pick up better from being out on site. So what I'm going to do now, is jump into Moodle. I'll bring that onto the screen now. Okay, so you should be in Moodle there. I might just change to a student. Oh, no, what have I done there? Student. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, here we go. Right, okay, so this is where you'll be comfortable with. Hopefully, you've got all of this stuff. We're down. You've got module 1. Hopefully, you might be uploading a research thing shortly in there. And you can see there's actually the webinar recording now that you can view if you want. So module 2, which is what we just finished there, you've got the slides and you've got some specific pedestrian audit advice, a little sheet there you can have a look at. You've got a quiz to do, just the way you did the other quiz. And this is where that assignment's housed. So writing audit findings. And what you can see there, you've got the functional design. That's the design. You can click that. That'll download. You've got 360-degree film sites. That's another PDF. So I'll just open that up. You can see the design will come up here. Hopefully, there's the design. You can look through that. And the 360. So this will come up as a PDF. You can click on any spot. It'll bring you into there. And then the final one is a Word document. And this is actually the assignment part. So download the Word document, open it up. And sorry, it's opening up on my other screen. Which okay, so what you've got here is some instructions, exactly step by step what we're asking you to do, some tips to help you do this, the risk matrix, which you could find out of the Austroads guide, no worries, but I put it there for your ease. And then we've given you this table of audit findings. Okay, I've given an example there. So you can see sort of how it's written, a snip of the design, risk rating using the new risk rating methodology, primary supporting and the like. You see here, we want you to write up 2 findings. Okay, write it into there, put snips of the design if you want, or snips of the 360-degree footage. If you can, that helps, make it really clear. Write it in that formula. Remember the recipe or the formula that I told you about, because that's what I'll be looking for. Have they followed that? Is it clear? Risk rating, remember. So think about, what's the chance this crash is going to happen? How bad is it going to be if it does happen? What's the resulting risk? Now, remember that this is the issue you've identified. What's the chance that it will result in a crash if they don't rectify that issue? And how bad will that be? I can't stress enough that people are probably going to over risk rate things. But that's okay. It'll be a learning process and I'll provide you feedback on that. You write your finding, you put your risk rating in, color the cells so it's clear to match up the color of these cells. Make some recommendations or a recommendation, categorize those, leave these blank because that's always there for the client to respond to. Then PDF that and upload it back in here into, yeah, actually, you will see add submission at that point. I don't know why I'm not seeing add submission there. That's interesting. So, Catherine, any questions coming in there?
Not at this stage, Ken.
So that's what you'll see. So you'll go download, download, download. Okay, fill out that, add submission, click on that, and pop your PDF in there, and you're done. Now, some of you are just going to immediately look at that and see things and know and find issues. Some of you are going to struggle potentially. And so have a good look at it yourself. But if you're really struggling and you go, I can't find anything, I don't know, then get in contact with us. We'll give you a few hints, a few things to look at. Now, I'll give you a little hint straight away now, is think about pedestrians and where they want to go and where they come from and how they get there and those sort of things. And you can look at that from the 360-degree footage, and you can look at the plan and how it changed things. That might be an issue. Have a think about angles. This is a weird sort of angled intersection. What problems might that cause for vehicles that are approaching, that are trying to look one way to decide whether they can give way? Where are vehicles going to prop or stop or pick up passengers or wait to turn? And is that going to block sight lines? Is that going to be an issue for other vehicles? So there's a few hints. You should be able to find plenty of things out of that. Okay, anything else there? Do your quiz as well. Sorry, we pile a few assignments on you now. There's a bit of a break between assignments now before you get your final audit. This is your practice before your actual audit, where everybody gets their own individual unique design.
Oh, good. No questions coming through, so you've explained it well, Ken.
Great. Well, let us know if you have any issues. Have a go at the 360 VR goggle. Look at it, see if you can get that to work. Some people find it great. Some people can't get it to work or get headaches and these sort of things, but you can use the desktop one anytime you need. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody. Great session, great input. Covered a lot and look forward to seeing you next week.
Great. Thanks, everyone. It was a great session. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.